In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Please be seated. Hello. Lamont, Wiltsee speaking to you from the command module. It's good to be back, everybody. I feel at home here, obviously. I see old friends, I see new faces, and it's really very good. And Lamont saw it, and it was good. So thank you. One of the things I like doing a whole lot, as you probably can tell even by now, is I like preaching. I've always liked getting on my hind legs and talking to people as if I knew what I was talking about. And after 3 seminary degrees, guess what? I do know what I'm talking about. So you can take that on faith, we might say. In an old prayer book I found around the house, it says of the ministers of the church, and this is in the Eucharist, the old Eucharist, "Give grace, O Heavenly Father, to all bishops and other ministers, that they may, both by their life and doctrine, set forth thy true and lively word, and rightly and duly administer thy holy sacraments." I see a lot of heads doing this. That's the old prayer book, the one I grew up with. All of what I'm going to say following is in light of and reflecting of thinking about the institution service last Sunday at 4 o'clock for Laurel. She was instituted as rector of this congregation. And I want to frame that and have you but think about her job and what it is. The purpose of this church, and virtually any church, at least in the tradition, the mainline religious traditions, is to provide at least one person, someone, to do the 2 elemental tasks: preach the lively word, the living word of God, and rightly and duly administer the sacraments, rites, and ceremonies. Those are the 2 most important things you hire Laurel to do. There are lots of things that you hire a rector to do, and Laurel is now my 4th, I think. Jim Brock, right? Then Jeff. Oh, who came after Jim? Oh, that's right, Greg Lister. Then Craig Lister. Then Jeff, so she's my 5th. Then Rob, now Laurel. 5. Wow. In living memory. That's remarkable. Wow. Each of those, and she, had an institution ceremony. Every one of them stood up and was instituted, it's the technical term, into the rectorship of the church of St. Dunstan's. And there were a number of symbolic things about that were presented to her. She was given a key. She was given a copy of the rules of the church called the Constitution and Canons. A letter was read to her by the bishop's representative saying she is now the rector of this operation. And then a Bible. Well, the Bible was actually first, but it's the last thing I'm going to talk about. So a letter, keys, a book of rules, and a Bible. The rectorship in the American Episcopal Church is a unique office, perhaps in the world, but certainly in church circles it is, because the rector, an instituted rector of an Episcopal church, is the chairman of the board of trustees, called the vestry, but it's a board of trustees. The church is a 501c3 corporation in and of itself. It is a corporation the income of which is not taxed. That's what tax exempt means. The income isn't taxed, not taxed. She is the chairman of the board of a corporation. She is, or a rector is, the president of the board of directors. The senior warden, is there a senior warden in the room? The senior warden is the vice president of the church. The rector's the president, senior warden's the vice president. And in the absence of a rector, be it vacation or vacancy, it is the senior warden who becomes the acting president or head of the church. And if you have any complaints, take them up with her. And the rector of a church not only is president of the board, chairman of the board, is also the CEO, chief executive officer of the corporation. And you MBAs out there can check me. How many corporations have that alignment? Not a lot. George is the maven of corporations. George is shaking his head or nodding it. No, it is, and I use this word advisedly, and you have to listen closely. A rector of an Episcopal church is almost feudal, not futile. F-E-U-D-A-L. In that is the case. The president of the University of the South, called Swanee, has a federal highway running through it, and his technical term is rector. And every year for 1 day they put a chain across the highway, and that was part of the institution of Swanee. And you know, Swanee is called the domain. Now that's a school with some pretensions when you call it the domain. He is the chairman of the board, well, not actually, president and CEO of the operation. That's what a rector is. It's a big deal. It's feudal. It's baronial, really. It's not. They aren't mayors. They're barons, really. When she was instituted, Laura was given a copy of the canons of the Episcopal Church. And they were first adopted. Canons means measurements and rules. The Constitution and canons of the Episcopal Church are a book that is in the library, and you can look it up, see what the operating principles of the church is. And when you're given that, if you know the history a little bit, you're looking at a document that was first adopted in 1789 in Philadelphia. The American Revolution is just over, and George is elected president. And they adopt the Constitution and canons of the Episcopal Church in the United States of America. When I was ordained, it was called PECUSA, the Protestant Episcopal Church in the United States of America. And those constitutions and canons were written by a bunch of savvy Americans, and let me tell you, but savvy. In that, they were sick and tired of what's called prelaticals, that is, bishops who thought they were a big deal. And they were also sick and tired of having to put up with ministers who were, the technical word is jerks. They were just tired of that. So the Constitution and canons of the Episcopal Church circumscribed the power of bishops and rectors very, very narrowly. For example, a bishop, the word bishop, it comes from episkopos, which means manager. A bishop is a manager, and so is Laurel. She oversees the congregation. She manages the congregation. However, there is one prerogative of managers that neither bishops nor rectors have. Rectors a little bit more than bishops. Bishops cannot hire and fire the heads of their profit centers. They can't fire a rector. They can't fire her. It's against the rules. You can't do it. When I was newly ordained, well, about 6 months after I was ordained, I was I still like to think I was the bishop's chaplain in Los Angeles. Actually, I was a dog's body. I went and got sandwiches for staff meetings and stuff like that. And one Thursdays, they were Thursdays, I came in with the sandwiches, and there's the bishop and the canon of the ordinary, that his top kick, the assistant, the one who was here last Sunday. What was her name? Yeah, Martha. She's the top kick. She's the canon to the ordinary. She's the one that the bishop delegates stress to. That's why they're important. So, at any rate, they're talking about this rector who's given everybody a hard time, and I come in with the sandwiches, and I overhear this, and it was okay. I mean, I'm a priest. I'm ordained. And I said, well, why don't they, and we can't fire him. We don't know what to do. We can't get rid of him. He won't quit. Well, I said, why don't you just cut his salary, have them cut his salary to $1 a year? Anybody think that's a terrible idea if you can't fire somebody? If you're going to have to put up with the jerk, at least don't pay him. But at any rate, so I thought that was a pretty good idea. And there was a pause in the proceedings. And Ollie Garver, a great man, the canon, looked at me and said, Lamont, you may be right, but don't give the laity any ideas. So what is the job of a rector besides, the formal preach and celebrate? It is to use the sacred power of the people in their charge to bring about and to reveal the kingdom of God. And that is not a power that is worldly in its source. It's not worldly power. Worldly power, the Russians have a great saying. They define power as who can do what to whom and who pays for it. Who can do what to whom and who pays for it. And that is not the power that bishops and rectors wield. The power they wield is pointing in a direction and say, I think we ought to go there, and if we agree, let's do it. It's very much more powerful in some ways than worldly power because it's based on consensus. It's based on agreeing. It's based on the fundamental dynamic of Christianity, which is intention. Christianity is a religion of intentions. And when you were here last Sunday, the people who were here, and this morning, you promised to join your intentions. Laurel and you join your intentions to bring about the gospel of God. That's what you did. Now, let me say right now, up front, the purpose of the ministry, bishop, priest, deacon, layperson, the purpose of that ministry is not, NB, repeat, not to make people happy. It's not. Being happy is nice. I would say that being happy with your life, you go to church and you're made happy. Think of it as mustard on a hot dog. The hot dog's the big deal. A little bit of mustard, it's nice. Or think of it as a chocolate syrup on a sundae. It's not the main, it's a condiment if you're happy. The role is not to make people happy. And boy, that's a hard lesson for people to learn. The purpose of the church's existence is to provide, to vision, a way to live the lives we have been given and live them hopefully, lovingly, and faithfully. That's what the purpose of St. Dunstan's is. So she was given a letter, a key. Remember the key? That means she can unlock and lock the doors. That's the symbol of earthly power that is conferred on the Baron of St. Dunstan's. But first, and now at the last, she was given a Bible. The Bible is a big deal. It's really important in Western civilization. It's a collection of documents that express a dialogue between God and his people. And it's about a 1,500-year process from the first fragments to the end of the Christian New Testament. It takes about 1,500 years to go from the beginning of that to the end of the Bible. Since that time, the dialogue between God and his people, God's people, has been expressed in churches and synagogues, not in Bibles. We use the Bible, important, but you are now, if you will, the Bible for the world. Now, the Bible is wonderful. We heard a portion today that is so human. And it's the story of belly buttons. In the book of Genesis, imagine it's October 3rd, 750 BC in Babylon, someplace. And there is a guy sitting in a pond with his son or daughter, because it's hot, and they're dusty and they're sweaty. and they're sitting in a bath. And imagine, if you will, the kid says, "Abba, what's this?" And he points to his belly button. Any of you have kids that wonder what that thing is? Yes. And what'd the guy say? Or probably the father, but could be the mother. Said, "Well, that's where women come from." They do? Yes. What happened was that a rib, you know that rib you chewed on last Saturday from the cow? That is a rib, and that's right here. And they took that out and made a woman. Wow, Now, just imagine, to take a step back, it's not scientific, it's maybe sexist, maybe patriarchal, but isn't that a dear way to begin to instruct children about bodies, their bodies? And isn't that a dear way to show in a patriarchal culture how important women are? They come out of men. And that's why they're called women. The Bible is a big deal. The structure of the church and the limits of the church are to reduce, as much as possible, the witness the church bears to the world through its rational word, which we're doing now, we're talking rationally, and the mystery of its sacraments of Holy Communion and baptism, the two major sacraments. But in those two, and especially in the Bible, we have stories and lessons that teach us what that looks like, that teaches us, in effect, how to be disciples. And the two we have today, the Bible part of the institution carried over to this Sunday, is a story of Jesus being taunted by the legalists, the legalistic people, the lawyers of the community. And one of them, or they come up to him, the first portion of the gospel, it's called a pericope, the first pericope of the gospel, is they're asking Jesus, is it okay for a man to divorce his wife? And Jesus says, he said, what did God say? Well, God gave us the ability to divorce our wives. And Jesus says, that's because of your hardness of heart. If you can't be anything but cruel to your wife, you can divorce her. But guess what, everybody? Your wife has the same claim on you have on her. Your wife is your moral equal. You and men and women are the same before God. No one is better than another. Then why did they have marriage? Why was it so an institution that at that time even was tainted with oppression? Cast yourself back to 750 BC, first century Palestine. There were men and women lived in two basically different spheres. Men lived in what's called the public sphere of commerce and politics and education and public discourse and discussion. Oh, I thought you were pointing to me. Oh, thank you. At any rate, thank you. I'm going to have to hurry up. Men lived in the public realm, and women lived in the realm of having babies and making homes. And given the realities of, let us say, gynecology in those days, 1 out of every 10 women died in childbirth. That pretty much obtained to the beginning of the 20th century when germ theory of medicine just began to take hold. And so women needed to be secure. That's why marriage existed. It existed for dynastic, political, economic purposes. But women were at a significant disadvantage. They couldn't divorce their husbands. So Jesus said, liberalizing divorce laws is too extreme. What I'm going to do is tell you no one can divorce anybody. And that was the rule in the church pretty much until the middle of the 20th century in the Episcopal Church. When a divorce happened, it was the responsibility to find blame. Someone was at fault. And until the 1970s in the Episcopal Church, they had that. It was called matrimonial matrimonial courts. and someone had to be found at fault for the breakup of the marriage, and that person could not get remarried. Now, does that express the love of God to you? I would say no. No, it doesn't. I would say it's better, I think, to look upon marriages that end in divorce as the reality akin to outgrowing a shoe. Outgrowing a shoe. Those days are over, then was then, and now is now. As Jesus said more than once. Then was then, and now is now. So we're supposed to take that into account, loving, faithful, and hopeful marriage relationships. And then Jesus does something incredible, I think, as a writer, whoever's writing this gospel. He's talking about marriages for stability, to be stable. And then the next little segment of Scripture is about children. Some genius, we call him Mark, yoked marriage and having children. Marriage and having children. And Jesus doesn't just say, be careful with kids. He goes one step further and says, look, if you want to enter the kingdom of God, you have to become like a child. Does that mean what? Does it mean, you don't say thank you? Or, what does it mean to enter the kingdom of, you can't unless you're a child. It means you have to be a little bit, I would say a lot, naive. You have to live in a life in which you can hope. You can still hope. If you want to enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to enter it as a child, which is with trusting acceptance. You assume love is fundamental and basic, and you don't even really know the cost of love. You just love. And Jesus says, that's the way you approach God through me as a little child. When we instituted Laurel last Sunday as rector, we were remembering and rejoining St. Dunstan's into the body of Christ as a 501c3 corporation. We were, it would seem to an outsider, conferring a whole lot of power on the rector through that key that she was given, the ability to shut the door and change the locks. A rector has that and doesn't have to ask permission, can just do it. We appear to give rectors a lot more power, but they don't have worldly power. They only have the power to call forth, lure the cooperation of the Spirit in you to accomplish godly tasks. In light of the gospel for today, to help us feel secure in the love we feel, and to be trusting enough to wake up. Each day we wake remembering we are secure and we are humble, we are naive. And each day when we awake, we are resurrected in that faith. Amen.